In the United States, a railway post office, commonly abbreviated as RPO, was a railroad car that was normally operated in passenger service as a means to sort mail en route in order to speed delivery. The RPO was staffed by highly trained railway mail service postal clerks, and was off-limits to the passengers on the train. In the UK, the equivalent term was travelling post office. For the middle of the 19th century, many American railroads earned substantial revenues through contracts with the U.S. Post Office Department to carry mail aboard high-speed passenger trains, and the Railway Mail Service enforced various standardized designs on RPOs. In fact, a number of companies maintained passenger routes where the financial losses from moving people were more than offset by transporting the mail. History. The world's first official carriage of mail by rail was by the United Kingdom's General Post Office in November 1830, using adapted railway carriages on the Liverpool and Manchester Railway. Sorting of mail en route first occurred in the United Kingdom with the introduction of the travelling post office in 1838 on the Grand Junction Railway following the introduction of the Railways Act 1838. In the United States, some references suggest that the first shipment of mail carried on a train occurred in 1831 on the South Carolina Railroad. Other sources state that the first official contract to regularly carry mail on a train was made with the Baltimore and Ohio Railroad in either 1834 or 1835. The United States Congress officially designated all railroads as official postal routes on July 7, 1838. Similar services were introduced on Canadian railroads in 1859. The Railway Post Office was introduced in the United States on July 28, 1862, using converted baggage cars on the Hannibal and St. Joseph Railroad. Purpose-built railway post office cars entered service on this line a few weeks after the service was initiated. The purpose was to separate mail for connection with the westbound stagecoach departing soon after the train's arrival at St. Joseph. This service lasted approximately 1 year. The first permanent railway post office route was established on August 28, 1864, between Chicago, Illinois, and Clinton, Iowa. This service is distinguished from the 1862 operation because mail was sorted to and received from each post office along the route, as well as major post offices beyond the route's endpoints. George B. Armstrong, assistant postmaster at Chicago, originally came up with the idea of having mail processed and distributed while the mail was on board, en route in mail cars. With the assistance of Schuyler Colfax, Speaker of the House at the time, and A. N. Sievely, third assistant postmaster general, he was duly authorized to test his ideas. In 1869, the Railway Mail Service, headed by George B. Armstrong, was officially inaugurated to handle the transportation and sorting of mail aboard trains. Armstrong was promoted from a supervisory position in the Chicago Post Office following his experiments in 1864 with a converted route agent's car, on runs between Chicago and Clinton, Iowa. RPO car interiors, which at first consisted of solid wood furniture and fixtures, would also soon be redesigned. In 1879, an RMS employee named Charles R. Harrison developed a new set of fixtures that soon gained widespread use. Harrison's design consisted of hinged, cast-iron fixtures that could be unfolded and set up in a number of configurations to hold mail pouch, racks and a sorting table as needed for specific routes. The fixtures were also designed so they could be folded away completely to provide a wholly open space to carry general baggage and express shipments as needed by the railroads. Harrison followed through with manufacturing his design at a factory he opened in Fond du Lac, Wisconsin in 1881. The July 1, 1862, Pacific Railroad Act signed by President Lincoln established government funding for the construction of a railroad from the Missouri River to the Pacific Ocean with the express idea of opening a mainline mail route across the western frontier. The act was officially entitled "An Act to Aid in the Construction of a Railroad and Telegraph Line from the Missouri River to the Pacific Ocean, and to secure to the government the use of the same for postal, military, and other purposes." The act opened the door to government-funded railroad mail routes across the American continent. By the 1880s, railway post office routes were operating on the vast majority of passenger trains in the United States. A complex network of interconnected routes allowed mail to be transported and delivered in a remarkably short time. Railway mail clerks were subjected to stringent training and ongoing testing of details regarding the handling of the mail. On a given RPO route, each clerk was expected to know not only the post offices and rail junctions along the route, but also specific local delivery details within each of the larger cities served by the route. Periodic testing demanded both accuracy and speed in sorting mail, and a clerk scoring only 96% accuracy would likely receive a warning from the Railway Mail Service Division Superintendent. Interurban and streetcar systems were also known to operate RPOs, the Boston Elevated Railway car being noted as making circuits of the city to pick up mail. In the United States, RPO cars were equipped and staffed to handle most back-end postal processing functions. First-class mail, magazines and newspapers were all sorted, cancelled when necessary, and dispatched to post offices in towns along the route. Registered mail was also handled, and the foreman in charge was required to carry a regulation pistol while on duty to discourage theft of the mail. Standardization. Because of the physical and mental demands placed on RPO clerks, the Railway Mail Service pushed the adoption of standardized floor plans and fixtures for all RPO cars, with the first plans published in 1885. The RMS also pressed for improved lighting fixtures to help the clerks see the addresses on the mail they sorted, first by improving the reflectors in the 1880s, then calling for discontinuance of oil lamps in the 1890s and the first experiments with electric lighting in 1912. Clerks' safety was also of great concern to the RMS, with the first comprehensive statistics on work-related injuries published in 1877. Through the second half of the 19th century, most RPO cars were painted in a somewhat uniform color scheme regardless of the railroad that owned or operated them. Most were painted white with trim in either buff, red or blue, which made the cars stand out from the other cars. By the 1890s, this practice had waned as railroads painted their RPO cars to match the rest of the passenger equipment. One RPO car that was displayed at the 1893 World's Columbian Exposition in Chicago is one of the last known examples of the early white color scheme. As the development of passenger cars progressed, so too did the development of RPO cars. The first plans for RPO car designs were based on light baggage car frames and bodies, which sometimes resulted in catastrophe for RMS employees when the trains were involved in accidents. From 1900 to 1906, some 70 workers were killed in train wrecks while on duty in the RPOs, leading to demands for stronger steel cars. The RMS developed its first standards for car design in 1891 to address some of these issues. In 1912, the Railway Mail Service developed a set of strength requirements for new cars in an effort to push the car-building companies into using steel for the car's major structural components and underframes. The core of the requirements was that each car should should be able to withstand a buffer force of at least 400,000 pounds. This requirement was doubled to 800,000 pounds in a 1938 revision of the standards. The requirements were again strengthened in 1945 with specifications that precluded the use of aluminium for framing and major structural components. The 1945 revisions also included a requirement for endposts to prevent telescoping in the event of a collision. Car manufacturers adopted these requirements and carried them through to all other models of passenger cars that they built. An interesting feature of most RPO cars was a hook that could be used to snatch a leather or canvas pouch of outgoing mail hanging on a trackside mail train at smaller towns where the train did not stop. The first U.S. patent for such a device was awarded to L.F. Ward of Elyria, Ohio, on January 29, 1867. With the train often operating at 70 miles per hour or more, a postal clerk would have a pouch of mail ready to be dispatched as the train passed the station. In a coordinated movement, the catcher arm was swung out to catch the hanging mail pouch while the clerk stood in the open doorway. As the inbound pouch slammed into the catcher arm, the clerk kicked the outbound mail pouch out of the car, making certain to kick it far enough that it was not sucked back under the train. An employee of the local post office would retrieve the pouch and deliver it to the post office. Cancellation stamps. Most RPO cars had a mail slot on the side of the car, so that mail could actually be deposited in the car, much like using the corner mailbox, while the train was stopped at a station. Those desiring the fastest delivery would bring their letters to the train station for dispatch on the RPO, knowing that overnight delivery would be virtually assured. The mail handled in this manner received a cancellation just as if it had been mailed at a local post office, with the cancel giving the train number, endpoint cities of the RPO route, the date, and RMS Railway Mail Service, a PTS postal transportation service between the kilobars. Collecting such cancellations is a pastime of many philatelists and postal history researchers. The Railway Mail Service organization within the Post Office Department existed between 1864 and September 30, 1948. It was renamed the Postal Transportation Service on October 1, 1948, and existed until 1960. After 1960, the management of railway post office routes as well as highway post office routes, air mail facility, terminal railway post office, and transfer office were shifted to the Bureau of Transportation. Decline and withdrawal. At the height, RPO cars were used on over 9,000 train routes covering more than 200,000 route miles in North America, while the majority of this service consisted of one or more cars at the head end of passenger trains. Many railways operated solid mail trains between major cities. These solid mail trains would often carry 300 tons of mail daily. After 1948, the railway post office network began its decline, although it remained the principal intercity mail transportation and distribution function within the Post Office Department. There were 794 RPO lines operating over 161,000 miles of railroad in that year. Only 262 RPO routes were still operating by January 1, 1962. In 1942, the pod began experimenting with a highway version of the RPO to serve the same purposes along routes where passenger train service was not available. These highway post office vehicles were initially intended to supplement RPO service, but in the 1950s and 1960s, HPOs often replaced railway post office cars after passenger train service was discontinued. The last interurban RPO service was operated by Pacific Electric Railway on its route between Los Angeles and San Bernardino, California, when the post office made a controversial policy change to process mail in large regional, sectional centers. Mail was now sorted by large machines, not by people, and the remaining railway post office routes, along with all highway post office routes, were phased out of service. In September 1967, the POD cancelled all rail-by-mail contracts, electing to move all first-class mail via air and other classes by road transport. This announcement had a devastating effect on passenger train revenues. The Santa Fe, for example, lost $35 million in annual business, and led directly to the ending of many passenger rail routes. After 113 years of railway post office operation, the last surviving railway post office running on rails between New York and Washington, D.C., was discontinued on June 30, 1977. The last route with a railway post office title was actually a boat run that lasted a year longer. This boat railway post office was the Lake Winnipesaukee RPO, operating between the Weirs, New Hampshire, and Bear Island on Lake Winnipesaukee. The final date it operated with the postmark was September 30, 1978. Preservation. Many RPO cars have been preserved in railroad museums across North America. Some of the cars are kept in operational condition. In 1933, Chicago, Burlington and Quincy Railroad rebuilt one of its baggage cars into a replica of the first RPOs that were used on the Hannibal and St. Joseph in 1862. The railroad displayed the car in several cities along the railroad. It now resides at the Petit House Museum in St. Joseph, Missouri. Bibliography. Footnotes. References. Sources: Johnson, Peter. Mail by Rail, The History of the TPO and AMP Post Office Railway. Ian Allen Publishing, London. ISBN 0-7110-23859. White, John H. The American Railroad Passenger Car. Baltimore, Maryland, Johns Hopkins University Press. ISBN 0801819652. OCLC 2,798,188. Further reading. Bergman, Edwin B. 29 Years to Oblivion, The Last Years of Railway Mail Service in the United States. Mobile Post Office Society, Omaha, Nebraska. Chrissy, Forrest. The Traveling Post Office. The World's Work, A History of Our Time. V. 2873-2880. Retrieved 10 July 2009. Galbraith, Ken. The Railway Mail Clerk and the Highway Post Office, When the Mail Really Worked. The Story of the Postal Service's Elite. Victoria, BC, Canada. Trafford Publishing. ISBN 9781412202275. Cushing, Marshall. The Story of Our Post Office, The Greatest Government Department in All Its Phases. Boston, Massachusetts. A.M. Thayer and AMP Co. at Internet Archive. Long, Bryant, Alden. Mail by Rail. New York, Simmons Boardman Publishing Corporation. Melius Lewis, The American Postal Service, History of the Postal Service from the Earliest Times. The American System Described with Full Details of Operation. Washington, D.C., National Capital Press. Retrieved August 15, 2012. At Internet Archive. National Postal Transport Association. Mail in Motion, Railway Mail Service Library, Boyce, Virginia. Portion available as a video clip at http://www.railwaymailservicelibrary.org/videos/mim-01.mpg. Romansky, Fred J. The Fast Mail, History of the Railway Mail Service, Prologue Volume 37 No. 3 Fall 2005, College Park, Maryland. Pennypacker, Bert. The Evolution of Railway Mail, National Railway Bulletin Volume 60 No. 2, 1995, Philadelphia. Toll, Charles L. Mayer, Henry A. Railroad Postmarks of the U.S. 1861 to 1886. Retrieved August 21, 2012. U.S. Post Office Department. Men and Mail in Transit, Railway Mail Service Library, Boyce, Virginia. Portion available as a video clip at http://railwaymailservice-library.org/videos/mit01.mpg. Wilking, Clarence R. The Railway Mail Service, United States Mail Railway Post Office. Marietta, O. Railway Mail Service Library, Boyce, Virginia.